Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. This episode is a previous recording of our live Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer series, where a live audience asks questions of professional Scrum trainers. We hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're located today. Welcome to Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer. Today, our topic is Agile Leadership. Super excited about this. I have one of our PSTs here, Mary Iqbal. She is going to be here to field all of your questions about Agile Leadership and being an Agile leader. So just very quickly, a little bit about Scrum.org. We are the home of Scrum. We were founded by Ken Schwaber back in 2009, and our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems. And we do so through our training, certification, and ongoing learning opportunities. We have a lot of free resources on our website. Please check those out. You're obviously a little bit familiar with them since you found this session today, but I hope this session plays a part in your learning journey as well. So with that, I will hand the ball over to Mary.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. And I'm thrilled to be here with you here today. I am actually very passionate about this subject of leaders and the tremendous impact that they can have on Agile teams. Some of the best Agile teams that I've ever worked with were supported by leaders who understood their role and who really promoted and supported the Scrum team. So my name is Mary Iqbal. I am the founder of Rebel Scrum, which is actually named after Star Wars, right? Rebel Scrum. And I'm also the organizer for Scrum Day Madison, which is an annual conference here in Madison, Wisconsin. This year, very exciting. Our focus is on continuous improvement. So check it out at www.scrumday.org. A little bit about me. I have experience in leading the Agile transformation for over 60 Agile teams. Of course, I have experience as a Scrum Master, product owner, and I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and again, organizer of Scrum Day Madison. So thrilled to be here with you all today. And I've worked with some really great companies in the past. You can check that out if you're in the live version.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. All right, so let's get diving in. Mary, if you want to set the stage a little bit for today's Q&A and maybe share with us what Agile leadership means to you and what an Agile leader is. I think that would be a good way to kick us off.
Absolutely. Well, there's a myth out there that there's no such thing as a leader in Scrum. And that is, nothing could be further from the truth. Oh, I see a hand raised. Is that? No, it's okay. All right.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay.
That was me by accident.
Totally happens. So there's a myth out there that there's no such thing as a leader in Scrum, and nothing could be further from the truth. I think the word self-organized and self-managed leaves this impression that leaders are not necessary. And that is definitely not the truth. As I said, some of the best teams I've ever worked with were supported by leaders. And some of the things that leaders do in Agile teams is they help teams understand, number one, why are we using Agile, right? Why is that? So they're connecting to the why. They're providing continuous guidance to the product owner to make sure the product owner understands what's the company vision and is my product's vision lined up with the company vision. They're making sure the team has the resources. And I got to say, they're probably spending most of their time removing impediments from the team's progress. They're making sure that the team is self-organized and that they have the tools that they need to deliver value incrementally. So that can mean anything from, do we have the right, if it's a development team, do we have the right, development environment? Or it can mean, does the team members understand this? So when I think about a leader, I think about somebody who's partnering with that Scrum Master and making sure that we're working together to promote Scrum, to promote the Scrum team, to empower the Scrum team. And that doesn't mean there's no such thing as a leader. In fact, we need leaders to support Scrum teams.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. All right. So I have a question here. So how can a Scrum Master embrace Agile leadership values?
Love that question. I really feel that Scrum Masters and leaders need to be developing a partnership. So in fact, whenever I interview Scrum Masters, one of the things I ask is, what's the leader's role in Scrum? Because I don't want to hear someone say, well, there's no such thing as a leader in Scrum. What I want to hear is, we're building a partnership to support the Scrum team. So I'll just tell a brief story. A number of years ago, I was working with a team who was brand new to Scrum. And in fact, the leader was brand new to Scrum. And so one of the things she asked me, she really did ask me, am I going to have a job after this team goes Agile? Because she was the director at that time. And I said, absolutely. I've never lost a leader because of Scrum. And so she was a little hesitant at first, but she dove in and she said to me, well, whatever happens to me, I want this to go well for the team, which to me was the sign of a great leader right out of the gate. But we started going Scrum, and some of the things that she did initially was partnering with me to make sure that the Scrum team understood what was expected of them. And actually, a lot of what she did was telling the Scrum team, yes, this is something that I support, right? Because nobody wants to be part of a Scrum team if their leader doesn't support it. So she was literally just verbally giving support. Yes, I support this. Yes, this is going to be good. Here's why we're doing Scrum. And she was working with me to communicate that consistent message out to the Scrum team. And then when we first actually started, so there was a lot of support initially. She supported the idea of letting the team self-organize. And she was there for part of the self-organization session saying, yes, I support this. I want you to self-organize. I want you all to be empowered. When we started sprinting, I actually met with her every day, her and actually the other leaders that had people, direct reports that were reporting to them who were part of the Scrum team. All those leaders met every day when we first started going Agile. And we were asking questions like, is everyone getting along? What are you hearing from the Scrum team members? How is it going? Is anyone having problems? So they were really partnering close with us. And then on occasion, she would come to the daily Scrum. Not all the time, though. She actually spoke with me and she was like, how would the team feel if I came? Would it be disruptive? But she came. And she came, once a week, I think usually was about how often she came. And she didn't speak. She was just there to get an early vibe on, is there an impediment? That was really what she was listening for. And then she would come to the occasional refinement meeting. If she knew there was a major thing that was coming up and the team didn't know how to approach it, she would come to a refinement meeting. And she would just be there to ask questions like, well, what would happen if we did this way? Or what are we trying to accomplish? And so she was with us all the way. She was meeting with her direct reports on a regular basis. She was talking to the stakeholders on a regular basis. So I really feel that without her, that implementation of Scrum would not have gone, even a quarter as well as the way it went, because of her support, her behind the scenes work to make sure everything was going well, her asking the question, do you have the resources? What do you need? How is it going? She really was involved. And that is just an example of what a great leader can do to support an Agile team. And, she asked the question, remember, am I still going to be here? She's still there. It's been, I think it's been 10 years now, and she's still there. She's in fact been promoted several times. And she is still, I'm going to call her a bulwark of Agile at that organization.
That is awesome. Thank you. Such a great story. So this question here, so as an Agile practitioner, we want to shape a self-managing team where the team is able to do their tasks and well-established Scrum practices with minimal supervision by the Scrum Master. What happened with my team is that they still feel that the job of the Scrum Master is to always facilitate all of the Scrum events, even if they are already exposed to the Scrum practices for the past 4 years. How can I communicate with them on this?
Great question. And I love that you're asking this one. So the first step is really literally just I would bring it up at the retrospective and just say it. Hey, I feel that that the team could be more empowered. And I want to just remind everyone that as a Scrum Master, I don't have to be there at every meeting. It's okay for you all to schedule your own meetings. It's okay for you all to lead the daily Scrum. So I would start with simply communicating that. And then I would tell the team, I'm not going to come to every daily Scrum this sprint because I want you all to self-organize. And then I would start not coming to them all. You could maybe go to every other for a sprint and see how it goes. Just by simply not being there, it forces the team to step up. But you're starting the conversation at the retrospective by just saying, look, I think you should be more empowered. Here's what I'm going to do about it. I'm going to stop coming to the daily scrum every time. And I'm hoping that you all will lead that daily scrum. And if you want to, you can behind the scenes speak to one of the developers and say, hey, can you step up and lead this while I'm gone? If you want to do that, or you can simply not go and let them self-organize. But part of that is stepping back from the daily scrum can be a great way to kickstart that. It's not that you can never go to another daily scrum. Of course, Scrum Masters facilitate events as requested or needed, but simply letting them take that is one way to start them down the path of empowerment.
That is awesome. Thank you. Really great advice there. So another empowerment type of question here. So this person's looking for a top 5 list. So here we go. So what are the top 5 keys that empower teams to lead higher levels of job satisfaction, motivation, and retention? I love this question.
I love this question. I think the number one thing is actually self-organization. So when I say self-organization, I'd even start with the structure of the team itself. So if you have a larger group of folks that are supporting a product, letting them decide, okay, should we have 3 Scrum teams or 4 Scrum teams? Should it be, or 2 Scrum teams, whatever it is, and who's on each team? So starting off with that level of empowerment, that level of self-organization, I would say is number one. I'm going to break self-organization down. I'm going to cheat with my top 5. My second thing also has to do with self-organization, which is, okay, not just from the team level, but from the day-to-day. How do we structure our tasks? How do we decide who does what work? Making sure that the team decides that. So more empowerment to the team, I think, is another. I'm cheating, like I said. I'm using self-organization twice because it's self-organization from even the team structure, and then self-organization to the point of how do we do our work, who's doing what. And so this sense of we own how we approach our work. And to me, you get better results. Not only does that help with morale, of course, but you get better results because the people who are closest to the work feel responsible for the work. And then number 3, I would put on there having a clear product goal. Because if you don't have a clear product goal that people buy into, you're like a ship without a rudder, right? You're going from here, you're going to there. It doesn't feel like you're going anywhere, right? And I think as human beings, we want to feel that we're accomplishing something, and having that product goal that we're actually shooting for is very empowering and very satisfying. And then number 4, I would say that we're actually using metrics to measure our success so that we can see that we're going, not only do we have a star that we're shooting for, but we can actually see the progress that we're making. And we feel empowered because we're self-managed to actually impact our ability to meet that goal. And then number 5, I would go back to leadership, that the leadership is supportive of the Agile team, that they're not undercutting the team's morale by doing things that are not promoting self-management. For example, they're not asking for the team's velocity, right? They're instead supporting and empowering the Scrum team and allowing them to be, again, getting a little bit self-managed. So I kind of mentioned self-managed 3 times, but it's really important. So those are the 5 things I would say that would really, really impact the team.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great advice there. Sounds like a blog article. So next one here. So this question, we might pivot a little bit and kind of dive into the definition of an agile leader. We have a lot of these similar questions coming in different veins. So is a business owner a kind of agile leader, or should be? Because I now hear a lot of things that Scrum Masters and product owners should do, and how many teams can one agile leader support?
Okay. So when we say business owner, I do flash back to like project management, PMI kind of things. Business owners, when you say business owner, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about a business owner in the sense of a key stakeholder? Or are you talking about a leader who has direct reports on the Scrum team is my question.
John, can you put that in the chat, please? If John is still on.
Or I can answer.
Anyway.
I'll answer both ways then.
Yeah.
If we're talking about somebody who has direct reports on the Scrum team, and the question is, what do they do? Then what some of the things that they do is connecting to the why, helping the Scrum team understand why are we using Agile. They're focused on the culture of the team, making sure the team is working together well. They're making sure the team has the tools and resources that they need to deliver incrementally. They're promoting self-organization, empowering the Scrum teams. They're providing continuous guidance to the product owner, making sure that the product owner understands whether their vision actually supports the larger organizational goals. They're removing impediments from the Scrum team's path. So those are some of the things that a leader might do. And then, of course, there's also, the human resources functions often that they may need to be focused on, and also escalations as well. So I used escalations twice there. I said removing impediments and also escalations.
Got it. Mary, John did get back to us. They said, the first option, a business owner is responsible for one or more processes and is a major stakeholder.
Okay.
Or at least responsible.
Okay. And so the question then is, what does a business owner do? What is their role? In that case, if they're more of a stakeholder, then their role is providing feedback, coming to the sprint review, providing feedback to the product owner. Maybe meeting with the product owner outside of the sprint review and giving input on what's in the product backlog, helping the product owner to maximize the value. So I want to be careful that the product owner is still the final say on what's in that product backlog, but the stakeholder can be extremely helpful by providing advice, by letting them know the impact of their decisions or the impact of the product owner's decisions on the product value. And also, giving them ideas. So that's kind of some of the things that the business owner can do for the product owner. And product owners will find that input invaluable, in my experience.
Awesome. Thank you. Hope that helps. All right. So next question. How can I, as a Scrum Master, protect my teams from leadership when leadership is actively removing Scrum and enforcing anti-Scrum practices and policies?
It's unfortunate that can happen. So the first thing I would do would be to talk to leadership about the value of Agile. Why should we use Agile? So a little bit of a sales pitch here. What is the value that Agile provides? And I would also, if you want, I would look at the Digital AI State of Agile report, and it lists the top 10 why Agile reasons that organizations use. And the number one reason for the last many years has been to deliver value sooner. This year, they also added incremental delivery to that. But taking a look at that top 10 and preparing a sales pitch, why should we use Agile? And then from there, I would also talk to them about the impact of some of the things that they're doing. So for example, if you said that they're promoting non-Agile practices, I imagine it could be velocity, talking to them about why velocity is not a great measure of success. We should be focusing on delivering value to our customers instead of worrying about all these other things. So just opening that conversation, helping to be that advocate for Agile, for Scrum in your organization, and explaining the value that Agile has for the organization itself.
Great advice there. Thank you. All right. So keep those questions coming. These are great. So this one here, what advice would you give to leading upwards? We are a delivery team who sees the benefits of Agile delivery and set ourselves up to self-manage, but find ourselves being undermined by senior business leadership who are solution-oriented leadership and changing our priorities that are not supported by data or are questionable decisions, potentially self-serving versus delivering on business outcomes.
Great question. So I think
big question.
It's a big question. I'd like to give the benefit of the doubt. I think leaders who are solutioning are trying to help. Even senior leaders who are solutioning are trying to help. And so I think the best thing that you can do is escalate this issue right through your leadership chain of command, but also it'd be wonderful if those leaders could have some kind of training. If they could go to the professional Agile leadership, that would be the ideal. But even just a one-day custom training on what is the role of executives in Agile, because when I have seen this in the past, they were trying to help and they did not know that their solutioning was actually causing a lot of problems. So there's a really great exercise about this in the professional Agile leadership class. I think it cannot be overstated how valuable that would be for executives to take part in that training. I think would be, if I could send every leader through it, I mean, I would. I think it's just such a great experience for them. But giving them the benefit of the doubt, they're trying to help and explaining to them the impact that solutioning has. Because when you tell this, when you tell somebody what to do, there's always going to be a misunderstanding. But when you tell them what you're trying to accomplish and why, right, that's where we get the real collaboration that can happen, because the team is experts in how to do things, right? The executives may be experts in where we're trying to go. And so making sure that we respect those boundaries and those levels of expertise is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. And so explaining that to our leaders is going to be really important. However you can get in front of them, whether it would be a conversation, whether it could be training for the leadership team, but explaining the impact of those actions that they have on the Scrum team would be invaluable. And I know it can be difficult to get in front of leadership, but I think by approaching this with a sense of positivity and understanding that they really are trying to help. No, I don't think executives are out there trying to ruin Agile. They just don't know the impact of solutioning that has on their teams. And so explaining that to them can be a great first step.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, moving right along with these questions here. So what are some common leadership pitfalls that hinder Agile adoption, and how can they be avoided?
The number one pitfall, in my opinion, is siloing teams. So executives have grown, and this is a result of a command and control mindset. So these two things are hand in hand. Many executives, not all, of course, but many executives have sort of grown up in this idea of command and control. And they take this to the extreme when they first start adopting Agile. So what happens is we go Agile, right? And a lot of times what happens is they go Agile within their current team structures. And so that's why I think that of command and control and siloed teams kind of goes hand in hand. So they go Agile within their current team structure. So if you're on the SQL team, you're a SQL Agile team. If you're on the web development team, you may just have web developers. And what happens is you create all these silos, which just means handoffs. And executives don't realize that, when Agile, even before the word Agile was a thing, the very first article, when they first started talking about this in the new product development game, we talked about we need cross-functional teams. When you have siloed teams, they're not cross-functional. So instead of having those silos, it would be better for the organization when you go Agile to take a step back and ask, okay, well, what are we trying to accomplish? This is a product and we want to deliver this with Agile. So we need, let's say it's a website. We need web developers, of course, testers, content writers, designers, search engine optimization specialists, whatever we need to deliver that product, have them be on the same product team. And that product team may have 60 people, and that's fine. They can have multiple Scrum teams, but each Scrum team having all the skills that they need to deliver value and then working together. So siloed teams, to me, is the number one issue that are a mistake that I see teams who are adopting Agile are not taking that step back and asking, well, what are we trying to deliver before they go Agile? So that would be number one. And then, of course, not supporting the team with training as well. I think if you're going to go Agile, you need to support people. It's a change initiative, right? And so the what's in it for me, if you don't have that support in terms of training and making sure people understand their jobs, that can also be a huge mistake as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. And someone gave a follow-up question to your first answer there. So how do you handle those executives, though, as an external consultant? you know the customer is always right kind of mentality?
I don't know. That's a great question. What I was really thinking when you said that was, a lot of times as a consultant, you kind of have an advantage coming into this, because it's a good and sad truth that companies tend to listen to their consultants sometimes more than their employees. So if you were to
Right.
speak up and say, hey, executives, you're really having a negative impact, I would really tailor how I would say that, though, of course. But really be thoughtful about how you word this. But if you were to raise the flag on this, I think that you would have a double impact, which means, what I mean by that is, you'll have a very positive impact on your customer. And also you'll be showcasing your expertise and your ability to provide value by providing sound advice, even to the executive level. So I think this is an opportunity for you to really shine, actually, by raising this as a concern. They may not be aware of it, or what's even more likely is they may be aware of it already, but not sure how to take action on it.
That makes sense. Thank you. All right. So this question here, can we apply agile practices and empower the agile team in a very regulated sector with structured organizational chart? In parentheses, they have functional type, where they have high formal reporting lines.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I have worked in very structured teams like that. So if you're trying to do agile, and I was taking a moment. If you're rolling out a new agile team, let's say, or even if you're doing a new agile team, the first thing you want to do is take a step back and ask, well, what is the product that we're trying to deliver? And then build the teams to deliver that. And if you go about it that way, you will have some team members that report to George, right? And some team members that report to Shameen, and some team members that report to Shaniqua. And that's okay, right? So you'll have, I'm going to call it sort of a matrix organizational structure, where some members of the Scrum team report to different leaders. And in my experience, that is actually a very positive thing, because you have multiple leaders that are focused on removing impediments for those team members. So in that situation, what the Scrum Master should do is meet with those leaders on a regular basis and ask the question, how's it going? Is anyone hearing anything from your team members that we need to know about? Or, so developing the idea that those leaders are working together to support your Scrum team is extremely impactful. So I would meet with them as frequently as you think you can get away with it. Make it 15 minutes, like a daily Scrum, just with the leaders, can be a really positive thing. And the leaders should think about this as, remember when we used to run projects, right? The team members on a project didn't report to the project manager. And the same thing applies to Agile. The team members on the Scrum team can have lots of different bosses, and that's fine. They don't need to report to the product owner. They don't need to report to the Scrum Master.
Right.
Those leaders instead are supporting that Scrum team. So absolutely, it can be very, very very successful. Even with rigid, as you said, rigid job roles, where this developer does that and this tester does that. They're working on the Scrum team.
Great, thank you. Hope that helps. So this next question here, so transparency is key, and we use tools like Monday.com for task tracking and Confluence for retrospectives and availability. However, I constantly have to remind my team to update these tools, which feels frustrating. How can I encourage my team to take ownership of updating their tasks in these tools without micromanaging and becoming a nuisance?
That is such a great question. So I would start by, and a lot of times I say that, I would start by bringing this up at the retrospective and explaining to the Scrum team members that, digging into why are they not using the tools? Is the board not conveniently set up? Is it that they don't know how to use the tool? But asking that question, why are we not updating this? And bringing up this idea that those tools provide a lot of transparency. So if they're not being updated, we're losing that transparency. We can't go in there and see how things are really going. For example, if the team is not updating the sprint backlog, we can't really see how it's going. So we're not making use of the tool. So we'd ask that question in the retrospective, why are people not updating the tools? And then, listen, right? If they're saying they just don't know how to use it, train them on it. If they're saying, well, they don't value it, then explain to them this idea that it helps us all to have that level of transparency, and listen to why they're not updating it. And if you can get the team to commit to updating it, they may not know that it should be updated before we come into the daily scrum, because if you're updating it during the daily scrum, it's annoying, right? To see other people, it slows things down, it bogs things down. So even just setting that expectation that before we come into the daily scrum, this needs to be updated. But I would bring it up at the retrospective and discuss it as a team, because the tools are there to help the team. If they're not making use of them, I'd want to know why.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I hope that helps. So leadership asks that an existing team merges with a newly built team that is actually working on a new version of the product of the existing team. What would you advise leadership as a Scrum Master? Should they even try to merge or keep the team separate?
I kind of think it's great if they do merge, actually. But it'd be hard to say this from my distance. But if you have a team that's working on I'm thinking of this as one team is working on the legacy system and another team's working on the thing that's going to replace them. Well, the folks that were working on the legacy system will want to be part of the new system. They're bringing the expertise on how things have worked in the past.
Right.
And they're bringing expertise on what the customer needs are. So I'd say yes, join them together, let them work together, have a single product owner. And the product is whatever it is you're building. It's not the technology necessarily, if you see what I mean. So having those teams work together, I think can be very, very helpful. A single product backlog, even as well, for both of those systems. What it gives to you is the team, the expertise as well, but the team members who are working on the legacy system as well, there's an advantage to them to be involved in building the new. That expertise, you don't want to lose that expertise. So yes, I'd be in favor of it, but I want to talk it through with you more, because I really couldn't say from here. But my first instinct is, yeah, have them work together.
That makes sense. Thank you. I hope that helps. So this next question, this is a big looming question. It's not really a leadership question. It's just a general question. We see it on social media all the time. Do you feel that Agile and Scrum's golden period is slowly sunsetting?
No. And I hear that a lot. And I know no, I don't think so. I think what is happening is, if you look at the digital AI report, and I sort of graph it over time, how many companies are using Agile. We did see a rapid growth in the adoption of Agile during COVID. We got up to almost to 90%. I can't remember the numbers. I'd have to go look at the graph, but there was a huge growth in the adoption of Agile. And then it did decrease a little bit. So I think what happened is companies went Agile during COVID because it was a lot easier to have the transparency, the inspection, the adaptation was extremely helpful, particularly in remote environments. But I think people were a little hasty, and they didn't go about it right. A lot of them took a step back, but then I'm seeing them come back and try it again, only this time a little bit more deliberatively, defining their products, really being thoughtful about how we use Agile. I think Agile is here to stay because it is the way to work for complex products. It's not for every single type of problem space, though. It wouldn't work well if you're writing work instructions, but if you need to inspect and adapt and collaborate, Agile is the way to go. I think what happened is people went Agile and they may have made some mistakes, and they're retrenching, and they're going to come back to it. I just don't think any other way of working is helpful in complex environments. And I think things are only going to get more complex. I think, though, that when you go Agile, it's not just about going through the motions. It's really about, how does leadership support the Scrum team? What does leaders need to, what changes do the executives need to make? What changes does the organization need to make to really support this? So it's not about going agile in a vacuum. It's about accepting agile as a way of working in the organization. And so that's why I think this Q&A is actually really very timely in helping organizations prepare and support agile and accept agile in their organization. So no, I don't think the golden age is over. I think it's going to keep going and grow.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we see a lot of that. How do you handle executives and or product owners that are not convinced by agile versus a waterfall approach? Interesting. And keep micromanaging and interrupting the team.
Such tough one. By the way, on the previous question, I want to add one more thought to that. If you think of a change curve, the adoption of agile is a dead. If you think of a change curve, it often goes sort of up and then it drops back down a little bit and then comes back up. I think we're in the come back up part of the curve. But back to that question on how do you handle executives who are just not convinced that agile is the way to go? I think by starting to explain to them that I think a lot of people have had negative experiences with agile. They've had people come in and say, you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do this and here's all these extra rules. And I think the way I think about agile is it is a way to help people collaborate together better to deliver value. And that's what it really is. Especially Scrum is really good at that because it has just enough structure, but not too much to help people collaborate around product delivery. That's what it is. And so when I talk to executives about it, I focus on why do we use agile and what is it for? They do not want to know what all the different events are. Executives do not need to know that. What they need to know is what is the benefit of it. They understand a waterfall approach because that's been around for a very, very long time. And when you talk about agile, it's a different approach. And so explaining to them that this is a framework within which people can collaborate, and that's what it's for. It helps people talk to each other so that we're discovering risks sooner. It helps us deliver a little something sooner. It helps us reduce risk faster because we're talking to each other and breaking down those walls. And so you can think of agile as a way to make sure that we're collaborating to deliver products in complex environments. I would never lead with, here's the sprint and here's the sprint planning when I'm talking to executives. Instead, I would talk about how it helps us talk to each other and build high-performing teams that understand how to work together. That's what I would talk to them about. I would never talk to them about what framework we're going to use because that doesn't matter. I would talk to them about the benefits of it.
That makes sense. Thank you. All right. So here's an interesting question. How do we leverage AI to be a successful agile leader?
Oh my God, there's so many great things that you can do now. So with AI, it can help you generate. Okay, I would not over rely on AI, of course, but
right.
You can get a little excited about it, but it can be very helpful in a lot of different contexts. So for example, there are some tools that would help you generate a product backlog based on your vision. That all needs to be curated by the product owner, so it cannot replace that sort of expertise, but can certainly help creating those product backlog items. So it can be helpful there. It can be helpful. Actually, I think that's one of the most interesting benefits of it. It can be helpful in helping the product owner craft a vision that really aligns with what are our company goals, what are our customers' needs, where should we go with this thing? So AI can be a very helpful tool. Right now, I'm seeing it most helpful to the product owner, but I know that there are other ways that it can be helpful for the Scrum Master as well, and certainly for developers in creating code more rapidly. So it's definitely a very interesting tool that can be used. From the leader's perspective, it can be helpful for them to. From the leader's perspective, I would be more interested in what tools do my team members need to help them deliver value. Should we be giving AI to our developers? Should we be making AI accessible to our product owners? So from the product owners or from the agile leaders perspective, I'm thinking of it more as I'm thinking of it more as a resource that I want to make available to my team members.
That makes sense. Thank you. So this next question is a product owner and agile leader as well, in your opinion, and what are the top items POs should do to be an inspiring agile leader for the team? Another blog post.
Another blog post. So I think the very top thing the product owner can do to be a great leader is to have a clear and compelling product vision and a clear and compelling product goal. So the vision is different than the goal. The vision is the guiding star, where are we going and why. The product goal is a little bit slightly more tactical, but making sure you have that clear vision, where are we going and why, and making sure that that's been communicated to the team, and then making sure you're measuring progress towards that vision. How are we doing? So for example, if your vision is to, I can't come up with one on the fly like that, but if your vision is to I can't come up with a vision like that, but making sure that your vision is clear and communicated, your product goal is clear and communicated, that you're measuring how are we doing on that vision, that the metrics that you're measuring actually reflect that vision, that really are a good measure of are we making progress against that vision, and then communicating with that with the team. And then here's the thing, and I know this can be hard for some people, but asking the team for input on your product backlog. For me, that was kind of hard when I've been the product owner. There's imposter syndrome that can set in. I don't want to ask the team because what if they think I don't know everything? But you don't know everything. So they will love it if you can brainstorm with them. Okay, here's our vision. Here's our goal. What do you think of it? Does it make sense to you? And being open to that feedback. And then once you have that vision and that goal, and then they're bought into it, showing them the metrics and saying, okay, what should we add to our product backlog? So just asking for their involvement can be a real game changer actually for the team, but can be scary for the product owner because you might be asking, you're afraid that you're not the expert, but it's okay, right? It's a good thing. People want to be involved, and simply by asking that involvement, I think that's the number one thing you can do.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. All right. So how do we help a small team with little time be more agile? We have a small team, we use Scrum, but don't often deliver the promised value, and company goals are not clear. However, when as a Scrum Master, I try to help the product owner, which is also a team member and a top level leader, I constantly get the answer that we don't have time right now.
Ooh. So the leader is playing a double role. They are a member
triple
of the
role.
Yes, I was going to say the triple role. Ooh, that is
because they're a team member, a top level leader, and a product owner.
My first instinct there is we may need to have somebody else identified as the product owner that has time to dedicate to it, because that is such a crucial accountability. And to have someone fulfilling that responsibility who doesn't have time to fulfill it is really hampering the team's ability to deliver value. It's like you don't have somebody minding the store because they're too busy, doing other things. So you really need somebody who's focused on that product vision. So that would be my first instinct, is to say, maybe we need them to delegate to identify a different product owner who does have time for it. So that's where I would go with that initially. Is that going to be possible for your team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Feel free to add your thoughts in the chat. Okay. So next one here. So we've time for a couple more. Do you have any advice on an agile implementation in an atypical product space? For example, using agile delivery on a business process level where the development and evolution may impact multiple systems. And in parentheses, they have not managed as products, processes, and change. Would you treat the process as the product in this case? That's kind of what is the product type of question.
Okay, so I would definitely be happy to talk through with you after the class, because I feel, or after the course or this meeting, because I feel like we could talk through a lot of different angles of this, but I would treat in this case that your process is the product. And I'm not sure if you're going to stay with the same process or if you're going to move on to others, but the process is the product. And so I think of this as almost a standard implementation, in fact, because it sounds like your internal customers need this process to be optimized. You can identify metrics around, it's almost like you can identify metrics around the process. For example, what is the lead time for this process? What are the measures of success? And then have a product backlog that includes improvements to your process. And in your case, when you're managing a process, it's going to be a lot more change management. So on your product backlog, you're going to have change management work. We're going to make this change. We're going to have to communicate this out. We're going to have to train it. All of those things can be in your product backlog. So literally, as Lindsay kind of said when she was asking the question, the process is the product. And so treat it like that. Make sure that all the work to improve the process is in your product backlog, even if it is change management work, communication work, process documentation work. All of that should be in your product backlog. And then have sprint reviews and bring your process stakeholders to the sprint review and ask for their input.
That makes a lot of sense. I hope that helps. So this one here, so how can you use agile leadership concepts for managing your operations? For example, if a team delivers professional services.
I've seen that work really well. In fact, some of my highest performing teams have been human resources teams because they take this idea of a mindset really seriously. So yes, it can absolutely work and be very impactful. For when you say professional services, I assume you mean things like human resources. Make sure you use, if you're using Scrum, make sure you use the framework the way it was designed. Have your sprint planning, have your daily Scrum, have your sprint review, have your retrospective. A lot of times when you're doing things like human resources, you may need to pay special attention to having some time for unexpected requests to come in. So you don't want to overload your sprint. But yeah, it can definitely work. In fact, it works really well in human resources in particular.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So this one here. So currently working with 5 agile teams on a single product. All share the same backlog, but they're often prioritizing work differently. This sometimes leads to misalignment in dependencies, sprint goals, and overall product progress. What agile strategies would you recommend to ensure better cross-team coordination while maintaining team autonomy?
Excellent question. So the first thing I would ask is, did the team self-organize, right? Because it sounds like when you say they're working from a single product backlog, I said, yes, but then you said something interesting. You said that they're often prioritizing stuff differently, which screams team silos to me. So I would ask the team, number one, are we organized the way we should be, right? And maybe we should try any team can pull any work, right? Because that was an interesting comment that you said, they prioritize things differently. It seems to me that there may be some silos even within your product team where this team focuses on this specialization and this team has another specialization. I would argue you might want to ask, can we make it so any team can pull any work, right? So bring that up to the team and ask if they'd be willing to try it. So that's the number one thing that jumped out at me with that question. The other thing that I wondered about is when you said they're working from a single product backlog, but sometimes they prioritize things differently. Do we have a very strong product owner over that? I want to make sure that that product owner really has the final say on the way that the work is ordered in the product backlog, and make sure that the goal of the product owner is to maximize value. The goal of the product owner is not to keep everyone busy. So if we're having to, it's an important difference. So if your teams are specialized, then you're all of a sudden getting into a bit of the, well, we need to make sure this other team's busy. And that's not what we want. Instead of, we need the teams to be organized to support the product. It's an important difference. And so I would push back on teams who say, well, we don't have that skill. Well, then maybe you either need to get those skills so we can work on the highest value work, or maybe we need to reorganize the team so that any team can pull any work. But if the product backlog is ordered a certain way, that's the way we should work it. We shouldn't be pulling lower priority stuff because we don't have the skills to do that. We need to get the skills to do that work in the way that it's organized or the way that it's ordered.
Great advice. Thank you. All right. Hope that helps. So
Call me because let's talk about that some more. Because that's
yeah. Yeah. And for anyone who wants to connect with Mary, she's on LinkedIn. Connect with her there. Awesome. All right. So let's see. So what can organizations do to support the product owner?
I am very passionate about having empowered product owners. So the number one thing, right? The number one thing you can do is first, I feel like you're going to know I'm going to answer. Make sure you're organized around products and that the product owner knows what are the left and right limits of those products. Making sure that the teams are not overly siloed, because when you silo teams, you're really handcuffing the product owner. But assuming that your teams are really product teams, another thing that you can do is let's respect the product owner's decision-making authority. And don't be going around the product owner. I have seen executives who were trying to help go around the product owner and go directly to the team members and repeatedly asking for help. We need to reduce that, to even eliminate that if we can. And the team members should push back on that and say, look, we need to go to the product owner to request that work. So making sure that we're respecting the product owner's decisions, that they're empowered, that we're not going around the product owner and requesting work directly from the Scrum team, because that can be very that can have a lot of negative impacts. But making sure that the most important thing is making sure those teams are not overly siloed, because that really handcuffs the product owners' ability to deliver value and to see the bigger picture.
Awesome, thank you. All right, just going through these questions. Some of these are more just general Scrum questions that we have left, but I think they're important. So at the daily Scrum, sometimes impromptu conversations come up and the team starts collaborating. How long do we let that conversation go on before suggesting a post-Scrum meeting?
Okay, great question. Not very long, right? Not very long at all.
Right, it's a small time box.
One of my worst mistakes as a Scrum Master is letting those conversations go on too long. So I would introduce the idea of you could try introducing the idea of the 16th minute. So it's at a retrospective or at some point, introduce this idea of the 16th minute, which is, hey, if you have a conversation that you need to have further, or a topic that you need to have further conversation on, we're going to discuss it in the 16th minute, which is immediately after the daily Scrum. We'll talk about this. Make sure that the Scrum team understands that the purpose of the daily Scrum is to improve the likelihood of delivering a done product that meets the sprint goal. It is to identify impediments, but not to solve them. So if you have an impediment, who can help me with this thing? Okay, we'll talk about it after the fact. We should not be using the daily Scrum to solve problems. So I would nip those in the bud really early, because what's going to happen is if people start doing that and collaborating, I know as a Scrum Master, I love to see it, but there's others who need to get onto their work. And so nip that in the bud really, really early. You're doing everyone a favor by doing that. Right. Helping the Scrum team a lot. So just say, okay, well, you guys can collaborate after the meeting. What's next?
Good advice there. Thank you. All right. So my question is, how do you handle constant shift? Sorry, let me start that question over again. My question is, how do you handle constant shift of priorities, and how do you manage client expectations and product feature delivery?
Okay. So constant shift in priorities. So it may not be a bad thing. I can't say from here that it is a bad thing, as long as the product owner is agreeing to this, right? Part of the power of Agile is the ability to shift direction. And so if you're shifting direction a lot, I would say you don't need a huge product backlog in this case. You need to make sure that you're focusing on incremental delivery so that you are able to deliver value. So cutting those product backlog items smaller can be of use. If, however, those shifts are because you don't have a rudder and you're just going all over the place, make sure that you do have a clear product vision and a clear product goal. So it's hard for me to say if you're reacting to changing customer needs, then the shifting goal is okay. If you're shifting around because you don't have a clear product goal, get that clear product goal. The other thing I would definitely recommend in that kind of environment is make sure you're limiting work in progress, because if priorities are rapidly changing, you don't want to have a lot of stuff that's half done at any one time. So make sure that your team is limiting work in progress. And what I mean by that is work with the Scrum team and ask them, introduce the idea of limiting work in progress, which means we're only going to have a certain number of tickets that are active at any given time. And that can be really powerful.
And how do you manage the client expectations in that situation?
So I would want to understand, why are we shifting priorities? Is it because the client is requesting those shifts? In that case, it's great. But if it's because we don't have a goal and we're just all over the place, then I would be careful to communicate the sprint goal to the client on a regular basis. Make sure that they understand what is our product goal, what is our vision, and why are we shifting all the time. So the why behind it is really important. It's hard to answer that question without knowing, why are you shifting priorities?
That makes a lot of sense. Well, we're coming up on our time. So thank you everyone for bringing your questions today. They were great questions. You were a great audience. Thank you so much. We do have quite a few questions that we did not get to. So I will work with you, Mary, on those, and we'll figure out a way to get those answered. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to give you the opportunity, Mary. Is there any piece of agile leadership advice that you want to give folks that joined us today and that are listening that maybe we didn't cover in some of the questions that came in?
Thank you. Thank you so much. The best advice I would say is recognizing the importance of leadership to an agile team and making sure that the leader understands their huge impact on the mindset of agile within the organization. I know mindset can sound like a fluffy concept, but it is actually really important.
Very important. Yep.
It's okay to change direction, right? That's a big deal, right? It's okay to change direction because we not like necessarily every sprint, but because we learn, right? And so if we don't learn anything, we would never change direction, for example. And there's a lot more that I could say about that, but the mindset of agility is really important, that it's okay to inspect, it's okay to adapt, it's okay to learn as we go.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So thank you, Mary, so much for your time today. This was a great hour here, and I hope the audience got a lot out of this, as I did. And for our audience here, just stay tuned for more episodes of Ask a PST. We tend to run them once a month. So keep an eye on our calendar for that. And thank you again, Mary, and Scrum on.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Bye, everybody.